live now?
We are live.
My name is Gary.
I'm Jeremy.
And we are the Paranormal Bikers. That's right, guys. We are here. My name is Gary.
I'm Jeremy.
And we are the Paranormal Bikers. We would like to welcome you all to our new show, which is going to be all about all things paranormal.
Myths.
Legends.
Urban legends.
And anything that you can think of that would be considered left of centre. We are based here in Australia, and we hope that you are going to enjoy the show. It's going to be something hopefully a little different to what is out there at the moment. Jeremy.
Yes.
Yes, that's it. So, we thought for a first show tonight, we would be discussing something that is probably close to everybody's heart, and we all know a little bit about it, and that is urban legends. He's lost it, people. It is our first show, so please bear with us. We're going to keep battling through and see how we go. So, yeah, when I was 12 years old, I grew up in the north of England, and I was given this opportunity to either go to Australia for a month with my family, or they would let me go on 2 holidays, one to France with the school, and I got to then spend 2 weeks of the summer on, I suppose, what you would normally call summer camp. I was 12 years old, and this is where I was introduced to this thing called urban legends. It was quite an interesting night. It started out when we were going camping out in the old mines and forests out in the Lake District of the UK. And they started doing the old ghost and spooky kind of
campfire stories.
Campfire stories. And I remember it well because there was a girl there that I actually didn't mind, and she didn't mind me. It's what you would call that summer love thing. She was the first girl that was interested in me that actually had boobs. So that was good. We called her Bra Buster, but she had something to fill the bra with, so it was all good. You know,
there goes my dignity.
She didn't mind it one bit. So I was trying to act all brave. We were there, you know, it was the guys and girls now. We were all supposed to sleep in tents. And the guys being guys, we'd just been told some ghost stories about the haunted caves. So we said, no, we are going to sleep in the caves. And before we walked off to the caves, which was quite a trek in itself, the last story is one which to this day I still remember. Now, this is my introduction to this thing called urban legends. And I guess as you would know, urban legends change depending on where you are.
They do.
They do.
You can hear it from one group and it's about one thing. Go research it, have a look at it, and there's several other things that can claim the same name of the story.
Exactly. I mean, this one, I've heard several different versions of it, and it's purely urban legend. We don't know what's true about it, whether there's any factual basis behind it or anything, but the story goes something like this. There was this young couple, and they were driving back through what we were told was the New Forest, which is a fairly large forest, and their car broke down. Now, it was a stormy old night, and the boyfriend turned to the girlfriend and said, look, I'm going to go for help, and you stay in the car, keep the doors locked. So he disappeared into the night, and that was it. You know, she was getting worried because he never came back. And then the next thing she knows, she started to drift off. She was in and out of sleep a little bit when she felt a rocking, and then she heard some noise on the top of the car. And that freaked her out. She didn't know what it was. She was too scared to look out. I mean, would you want to look out when
particularly
something like that's happening? I mean, you know, you don't want to do that. And she was freaked out. And then the next thing, there were these big smashes happening on the roof of the car. and she did not know what it was. And this went on for several hours. She was beside herself. Her boyfriend wasn't there. This was all happening. She was in the middle of a dark forest alone in a broken down car. Anyway, the story continues that as the light of morning was starting to break, this cop car rolled up, and he was in front of her. He's got out of the car, and he sort of come forward very, very, very slowly. She's seen him, and she's been putting up with this smashing on the roof all night, dents in the roof and all that kind of thing. And as it turns out, he said, look, I want you to get out the car and come to me, but whatever you do, do not look back. And she was very nervous about this, so he reassured her from from probably 15 metres away. I'm ready. I'll come and get you if I have to, but I need you to come to me, and I do not want you to look back. So she gets out of the car, starts to walk towards the policeman when all hell breaks loose. The smashing starts happening on the back of on the roof of a car again, and she starts running, and at some point she's turned around to see this guy on the roof, and he's got this stick jammed into the neck of her boyfriend's head, and he'd been beating the car all night with the boyfriend's head.
Right.
I remember that as a kid. I was 12 years old, and
Well, as a 12-year-old, you wouldn't want to sleep after hearing a story like that.
well, this is it. We went back to the caves afterwards, and again, being all brave 12-year-old boys, we were going to set our sleeping bags up, and you couldn't have moved. You couldn't have slipped a match between us. We were all cramped together that bloody tight.
Well, if that was me there, I'd be wanting to have my sleeping bag the furthest from the cave itself.
No,
we can get up and run.
We were actually inside the cave, and these caves were haunted caves as well. So it was a sleepless night, to say the least, and it was one of those things that story is something that has stuck with me for a long time. And like I said, I didn't know what an urban legend was at that point, and to hear this, it really does make you think, was there any truth to it? Was there any basis to it in reality?
You would sure hope there was no truth to that, because, I don't know, having some meth head on top of your car, smashing your car with your boyfriend's head, that's...
Well, when I was 12 years old, there was no such thing as meth heads, you know.
No, I'm just comparing it into the comparison today.
Yeah, well, that's it, you know.
And that's just another way that urban legends can change. People say, oh, this and this happened, and next thing you know, you're talking about some guy taking LSD, jumping around on a car.
Well, that'll do it. You're just totally off your head, and you just don't know what's happening. And like I say, if you look at people like Nostradamus, and he talks about the dead will walk the earth. Yes. He did this in the 1600s when he did all of his quatrains and things like that. To him, I guess, looking at your average meth head walking around like a zombie, that could be very well what he was explaining.
Could be. Well, yeah, they're lifeless, head down, don't really look at anything.
Exactly.
It's like the people walking past the service station today.
Exactly.
On the way to your house.
Exactly. So, what's truth, what's not, what's total fiction, and is there any bits in the middle that tie it all together?
I suppose that's what makes it an urban legend. You just won't ever know.
That's it. So that was my introduction to the urban legend, and obviously there have been a lot that have gone on from there. I believe you have a couple that you want to talk to us about as well.
Yeah, there's a couple there, but myself, I haven't really had any like bam in your face introduction to urban legends. It was just kind of things you learn through school. You'd have projects you'd do on it, and then coming to light now, having a look at things, it's like, oh, that was an urban legend when you think it's just a camp story, or you just thought someone, oh yeah, listen to this is what we heard, this happened here, until you sit back and go, oh well, that's an urban legend. Sometimes you just don't know it's an urban legend. No, you don't. It's it messes with your head actually, and like I said, it's very hard to work out. Well, it is. If you're anything like me, you're always over-analysing things and overthinking things. So you can have something in the back of your head, you forget about it for 15 minutes, and then bam, you're straight back on the thought over and over again. What if this happened? Why did it happen? Who did it happen to? How would you feel if this happened? It's just a roller coaster in your head of watching people react to the way urban legends are set out. Well, that's it. I mean, if you get to our age, obviously, because we're not young,
we have more logical thinking minds, and usually you can look at it in the right way.
Well, yeah, you've got that ability to define what can be and what isn't.
Yeah. When we were kids, urban legends were straight out urban legends, but as we've already discussed, they do manifest, they grow, they change.
It's like a big game of Chinese whispers.
Exactly. So what we talk about when we were young, the same kids could talk about the same urban legends, but they've changed that much that we wouldn't recognise them.
Well, that's like saying with Nostradamus. Now look at now, you got The Walking Dead and everything else. Zombies this and zombies that, shoot them in the head. It changes so drastically over years that you just don't know what's what until you go have a look for yourself.
No, that's it. So we do have a couple more that we want to talk about tonight. I believe you're going to take the next one.
So, yes, the Hook Man. It's an apparent urban legend about a killer with a pirate-like hook for a hand. They have seen or heard of this Hook Man since the 1950s. It's been reported by people in the early 60s that this Hook Man had escaped from a mental asylum. He is known to drag hooks across car doors, hitting roofs. The basic premise involves a young couple cuddling in a car with the radio playing. Suddenly, a news bulletin reports that a serial killer has just escaped from a nearby institution. The killer has a hook for a hand. For varying reasons, they decide to leave quickly. In the end, the killer's hook is either found hanging from the door handle or embedded to the door itself. As we were saying earlier with the different variations, some people say that the people were taken out of their cars and killed with the hook. Some people have said there's also been cases of a shadowy figure with a hook-like hand standing within a radius of them, and as they've looked around to see the figure again, it's vanished.
See, that opens up a whole other kettle of fish talking about shadow people and things like that, which is a paranormal phenomenon.
Well, do you think they go hand in hand, some of these urban legends and paranormal experiences?
I think it's very possible because people do have a habit of exaggerating things and talking them up to...
Well, who doesn't like a bit of over-exaggeration?
Well, exactly.
You know, I caught a fish, it was this big. No, it was this big.
Yeah, well, they're always big fish that we catch. Let's believe it, you know. Many people don't believe it, but we will.
I do.
But yes, I do believe that that could be one of the possibilities, how these stories actually come to be in the first place. Somebody experiences something and they just take it to that next level.
Well, it's not even that. It's even as a child, like you say, for 12 years of age. Who's to say that it wasn't an out-of-body experience for yourself? Why are you being told these stories to actually be thinking that you're actually there, seeing something like that that's terrifying you that bad?
See, my history is that I saw something when I was 7 years old, which totally baffled me. I thought I might have imagined it at the time, but then there were reports about it happening on the news the following night, which only validated that I had seen something. And from there, I actually started, even as a 7-year-old, started researching as much as I could, which back then was before the internet. I know it was after the wheel.
After the wheel?
But before the internet. So
it was carry a pigeon to the bookshop.
Pretty much, yes. 2 pairs of shoes to get to and from the shops. And it was a case of, I started learning things at an early age. So I did have, I guess, a grounding in the paranormal field, even at that young age. And I hadn't actually experienced any of the urban legend side of things until I went on this holiday. And it proved to me that kids have the best imaginations.
I suppose it's a little bit of a self-validation, knowing that you're not going crazy as a 7-year-old when you get that experience as a 12-year-old.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I've spent the rest of my life researching this, and if truth be told, it actually opens up a lot more questions than it does give you answers.
My own experience, yeah, it does. It opens up a lot of questions. I've found myself sitting there for hours on end talking to other people that I know of.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things you could sit there for 3 days on a bender and just talk about things.
Another thing it brings up is when that many people start talking about these urban legends, you know, it goes around the school, everybody starts talking about it. It brings back that whole question of manifestation. If there are that many people talking about it, do people actually start experiencing it for real? Or is it just a mass hallucination? What is it?
What do they call it? I've forgotten the name.
Well, that's all right. We're allowed to forget things like that. But where I'm going with this is, you know, what is legend? What is reality?
Well, even to this day, you still don't know what's reality and what's not reality.
I mean,
to an extent.
Exactly. I mean, you take, for instance, well, the story, the urban legend that I just spoke about, and the one that you just spoke about. We've got a couple more that we're going to talk about tonight. And truth be told,
there's enough sick and twisted people that'll probably go out and do something like that, though.
Yeah, I know, but if you look at the list that we've got, all but one of them actually revolves around an escaped lunatic.
Yes.
So was there one case of an escaped lunatic doing something so diabolical at some point in time that
run over all the other urban legends?
And each culture, each story changes a little bit, so you end up with a number of different urban legends. Do they all have a rooting in that one specific story?
Well, I suppose if they are all that way, is it just that there was a lot of sadistic people back then and not much has changed now?
But you got to remember, most of these urban legends started in the 50s, 60s,
yeah.
Basically before the internet came into being. And when you look at it like that, since the internet has come in, these stories have just spread like wildfire now because it's so easy.
You've even still got new ones now that are being brought up.
I'm sure there are many of them out there that I don't even know about. If you start looking into like urban legends from Japan, they are some of the creepiest, most messed up things you've ever talked about. Now, I've researched a couple of them to discuss, but I can't get my head around some of them to actually adequately explain them on the radio.
And half the time they can't even adequately explain how they went themselves.
No, that's it. So anyway, we're getting back to your next story.
My next story or yours?
Was it my next story?
Yeah.
So yeah, that leads me to my next story, which is another urban legend based around an escaped lunatic.
Love the lunatics.
Well, we do, because they're good for stories, and they're always very interesting characters. This one starts off with a young lady who's home alone. I'm sure you're already starting to get the hang of which one this might actually be. When reports came across the TV about a escaped lunatic in her neighbourhood, and she was home alone. She just had her little pet dog, and she was a bit concerned, and ended up going to bed early, locking all the doors, all the windows, making sure the house was secure. So she's gone upstairs and gone to bed, and she's been sleeping there, and then at some point she starts hearing water dripping. The details of what you would hear at this point vary from story to story, but basically there is a noise in the house that creeps her out, and she takes comfort in the fact that the dog is right down at the bottom of the bed beside her. So she, a hand sort of leans over the side a little bit, and the dog keeps licking her arm, and that basically gives her the self-assurance that everything's going to be all right. The dog's there to protect her. So she falls asleep, and a couple of times she wakes up fairly restless, and the dog's always there, gives her hand a lick, and it's all good. She sleeps, gets through the night, wakes up the next morning, the sun's out, and she climbs out of bed to expect her dog there, and find that the dog is actually under the bed, and it's been absolutely torn to shreds. And in the mirror right beside the bed, her dresser, in the dog's blood are just these words saying, "Humans can lick too." Yeah, how creepy is that?
That's messed up.
It is messed up, yes. Now, again, you're talking escaped lunatics, people who are fairly vulnerable, I guess, and open to this kind of thing. It just makes you wonder.
It does, especially, I'm not saying anything negative, but females can, how would you say?
I'm going to leave that in.
I don't give a shit, you can leave it in. I was saying, as in being more the vulnerable person, you got a lot out there that, I suppose there's guys as well, that fear for things like this, and I suppose it's not a bad fear, it's a healthy fear. I suppose if someone's sadistic enough to kill your dog, they're going to write messages on mirrors saying they can lick your hands as well, I suppose.
Well, I mean, you look at the way the world's going now, and yeah, you do normally think of a female being the more vulnerable of the two sexes, but in this day and age with things changing the way they are, anybody could be anything at any time. I mean, if you listen to what they say, there's
just lucky I don't have a fetish for licking hands.
That's just creepy, man.
But with that as well, though, they've also made movies off of many urban legends, and that's licking. The licked hand is even one itself. Earlier stories claim that it's called Mr. James' story, called The Diary of Mr. Pointer, in which a character experiences a similar fate.
Yeah. Movies, they do like to actually jump on these stories because they make good films, and the issue is that every storyteller likes to put their own flavour to it to make it individual and obviously take it to that next level. You know what I mean? You look at M. Night Shyamalan, he is a master of telling a good story with a good spin at the end. You give him one of these stories and you might not even recognise it as the urban legend that it is by the time it comes to be.
Yeah, but it's the same like with even a topic that I'm going to bring up shortly. They've had it and they've made it into films like The Candyman. I suppose it's giving away a bit. And they've also covered it on X-Files.
Yes.
So I suppose it goes through urban legends being a type of pop culture as it already is.
I actually do believe they covered it on Supernatural as well.
They more than likely did. So the next one that I was looking at talking about was the Bloody Mary.
That's a good one. I think we all know that one.
It's an easy one. Well, somewhat easy. I'll still probably find a way to stuff it up. But I think the age-old story goes about going into a mirrored or bathroomed area with the lights on. Go in there, close your eyes, turn them off, and say Bloody Mary 3 times in the mirror, and you open your eyes. Now, some say that you can see Queen Elizabeth. Some others say you can see...
That's scary.
Yes, it's very scary. Some say you can see Queen Elizabeth. Some say that you can see what your future may bring out for you. Some people also claim that if you see a skeleton or a skull, that it could be the demise of not the demise, but it could be the early ending of your life, I suppose you could say.
And some people just see Bloody Mary staring right back at you.
Not Queen Elizabeth, sorry, Queen Mary. That's what I was getting at.
It's still creepy, man. It's still very creepy.
I really wouldn't want to wake up look next to her and go, oh, geez.
What the hell are you doing here?
A lot of people also say that, this, could you call it phenomenon? Some people say that it's been taken on that you can see Queen Mary sitting there, and they say it has links been made to Queen Mary I as she suffered multiple miscarriages during her reign. Don't know how much truth is behind that. But
if you think about it, though, you're talking about Queen Mary, and which would tie in with the Bloody Mary story. How long has that legend been going around? And was there an actual truth basis to it all?
Well, how long ago was Queen Mary I?
Oh, don't ask me silly questions like that.
Well, that gives you some extent of how long it has actually been around.
It's been a while. So I'm not up to par with what's going on in the royal family at the moment, because there seems to be a lot going on there, which is very unusual as well.
Self-isolate, wear a mask.
Yeah.
I think I remember playing Bloody Mary myself once or twice as a child and early teens, and just didn't see much and thought, well, this is a load of crap. But there's been other videos where you watch and you find that they really scare the crap out of themselves.
Mm. No, I never used to play games like that when I was a child. Again, like I said, I grew up in the north of England, and the town that I grew up in was very old. And it was actually an airbase in the Second World War, and there were whole streets that were built of housing to house all the army and the soldiers and the Air Force personnel. And when I was growing up, they were actually starting to demolish all of those houses to build new housing estates. And I do remember this one day going past these houses, and there was this... It was very weird, because there was this one particular house. It was a double-story, what they would call a double semi-detached house over there,
Like
like a duplex.
Timber, woodstone.
No, it was brick. It was brick and tile. And there was this lady. She was in the upstairs window, and she was just watching us because I was with a few friends, and we were walking to the shops. And she was just watching us. And I remember it because the curtains were blowing out of the windows and everything like that. And I just thought that's, for some reason, it just struck me as strange to see because I'd never seen that before. And when we were coming back from the shops, looking at the same house, it was actually a derelict house. There were no windows in there. The frames had all been pulled out, and it was 2/3 demolished.
So does that go with the whole thing with the Hookman sort of idea?
Well, I don't know, but people seeing something like that and then spreading that story, and then as people add to it, it starts to grow.
You wanted. You could have said whatever you wanted.
Exactly.
Make up your own urban legend.
No, I didn't. I just explained to people what I actually saw, and it just went from there. But it just makes you wonder. Like I said, I've used the word. It makes you wonder quite a bit, and that's exactly.
But it does make you wonder.
That's exactly what this phenomenon is all about. It's all about what's real, what's not. Man, the imagination has got no bounds.
No bounds whatsoever.
No. So I think we're just about out of time for this first little show. We will be back. We have a lot more topics, and we do actually have a lot of very famous people who have graciously said they'll be on the show to talk to. I'm hoping that...
no names?
No names at the moment. I can't say that, but some people you've seen on TV, in fact, a few of the people you've probably seen on TV, mostly involved in the paranormal field, so our target audience.
That's another thing you forgot to mention at the start, or I forgot. Not only just the urban legends and myths and stuff like that, but UFOs.
I suppose you could actually class them as a urban legend in their own right.
Yes and no, though, because there's been some sort of paperwork form behind it saying that, there's a potential that they do actually exist.
If you've been watching what's been going on in the news these days, I think it was only last week, the CIA have actually released documentation that they do have artifacts from crashed UFOs in their possession. Now, again, is that true? Is it not? I don't know.
Urban legend, maybe.
It could be the very starting of something new. You know what I mean? What's coming next? Everybody knows about Area 51. Everybody knows about the Roswell crash.
So you could just say E.T. got home.
Possibly. Again, you talk about black-eyed kids. You talk all these different things. They're hybrids. Are they?
It just doesn't make any sense to, I suppose, any sane people. But who's sane these days?
Well, I'm hoping that most of the people that are going to be listening to this podcast are actually going to be in the same category as we are. I'm not going to define what that category is.
Well, I'm very quirky and weird, but hey, that's me.
Like I said right at the start, it's for all people that are a little bit left of centre, and I think that describes us down to a T.
Yeah, I just don't talk to myself much.
Not as much as I do. Anyway, I think that's it for tonight, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in. And like I said, we will be back very soon with more shows, more guests. And we might even take it to the level of actually putting a couple of little videos together as well.
Yeah, videos would be good. I suppose it's something that you'd focus on in the long run.
Like I said, let's get this up and running first and see where it goes. We've got a lot of topics that... We were going to talk about something else tonight, but we thought, no, that's something fairly...
Because I suppose once you look into it enough, there is that much information on it, that many stories about it, that you can just go for an hour itself, I suppose, on that one thing.
Exactly. So we thought this would be a nice little gentle breaking into the new show. Yeah. And again, we've got to go now because time is running out, but we would like to thank you all for tuning in and stay tuned for our next show.
Keep it spooky.
Take it easy, guys.